What's good, everyone? Coach Damien here, the Shift Method podcast. Hope everyone's having a wonderful day. By the time you're watching or listening to this, it's going to be March 27th. If you can believe it, April is almost upon us. It's springtime. For my up north listeners, I know I got a lot of people in Purdue. Hopefully you're getting some warmer weather. Sorry for your loss, by the way. I was rooting for Purdue in the March Madness tournament. I'm so sorry, but I'm happy FAU at least won their first game. I don't know where they're going to be when this comes out, but hopefully they get out more than just the first round. But long story short, same updates as always. Again, this is episode number 39 on the Shift Method podcast. As always, we have custom training templates available. Y'all can get merch on the website, theshiftmethod.org. And of course, I have a couple of spots open if you are looking to train in person down at Johnny O's Gymnasium in Boca Raton, Florida. Again, just head to theshiftmethod.org, click any of those take action buttons. And of course, we got content on all platforms now: YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whether you want to look at reels, shorts, or just regular feed on your TikTok. All my content is now available there. Of course, you got the podcast every other Monday and a YouTube video on the Mondays. We don't do the podcast. So you can get the Shift Method anywhere that you want. But enough updates from me. Today's a really cool day. Normally you hear me say, this is a guest I know, this is a colleague and a friend. This is someone who I actually don't know very well, which is awesome because I get to learn a little something today from another fitness professional over in New York City. And I'm going to kind of let him introduce himself. We're going to talk about some things about his background and a little about an app that he utilizes. And that is going to be Mr. Teddy. Teddy, can you go ahead and introduce yourself to the people, please?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Damien. My name's Teddy Woolsey. I live in New York City, originally from suburbs of Chicago. And I am a B2B tech sales professional / online fitness coach. And I say it that way because I want people to see that we can utilize our time wisely and stay fit at the same time. But effectively, what I do is I teach the absolute fundamentals, fitness 101 and 202 to the general public in an effort to reach the general public with as low cost and free resources as possible to allow them and enable them to take full control of their fitness destiny. And as Tony Robbins once said, when it comes to fixing your own life, participating in your own rescue. So that's a little overview and blurb of me. And I'm just excited to be here and talk a little bit more about everything, man.
Yes, sir. We got to start off with a controversial thing now that I know you're from Chicago. Rumor has it that it is a horrible thing to put ketchup on the hot dog. Is this in fact something that you live by, sir? Or do you need to censor yourself on this statement? How does it work for you?
Oh, listen. So I am not a food shamer because my family and we grew up on basically boxed mac and cheese and hot dogs, SpaghettiOs. I lathered ketchup all over hot dogs back in the day. I haven't had a hot dog in like 20 years, but nonetheless, I have no issues with that whatsoever. And you know what? You do you, boo-boo.
There we go, man. For my couple of Chicago listeners out there, all I got to say is I don't have hot dogs too often either, but if you're not putting ketchup on a hot dog, you're missing out on life. You could be living a much more fulfilling and wonderful life if you just gave in, if you didn't worry about.
I'll say this, pizza is better out there. I will say that. I know that's super controversial because we're talking three types of pizza, right? Like there's Chicago-based pizza, then there's the Sicilian or thin crust in Connecticut and in New York. Now I went from Chicago to Connecticut to New York, so I've had arguably the three best types of pizza in the country. With that said, I think the fair thing to compare is New York versus Connecticut, and Connecticut, particularly in New Haven. The Prez on Barstool Sports said it himself. That's the best pizza in America, and I concur. There's Frank Pepe's out there. It's unbelievable, man. I don't know what they do. They probably sprinkle some crack dust on there or something, but it's really, really good. And so that's really solid. Nothing against New York pizza. It's good as well. But that's probably number one out here. But my heart and soul is built around Chicago-based pizza for these reasons. In the Midwest, everything it's like thicker. There's more bread, there's more cheese, there's more sauce, there's more sausage, etc. And you're just used to having a substantial bite every time you bite in, particularly with deep dish. And it's just a different ballgame, man. So once you go there, you can't go back.
See, I learned this because I know someone from the Connecticut area, and I learned that they're really good at making pizza, which I never would have guessed. When she told me this, I'm like, what? Pizza in Connecticut? Like, I would have never understood that. But here's now the second time I'm hearing it. So it's got to be true.
Objectively, there's no way around it. And like I said, like the Prez backs me up on this. So like I I love it for the simplicity of it. Like the pizza's lighter. You can have more of it. You can have a whole
Okay.
pie to yourself. Chicago, you can't really do that. If you're halfway down into a large pizza, like you're really struggling to get through, and you're going to feel it for about a week. But they just like to hit you where in all the right ways out there.
Yeah.
That's not
Well,
kind of
very
weird,
cool,
but
sir. Yeah. No, I appreciate you doing a little background. It's cool. Like we have a little bit of a Midwest connection. Then again, I have a couple friends that are in the Chicago area. I went to grad school at Purdue University up in West Lafayette. So,
nice. Yeah, yeah.
semi neighbors for a short period of time, which is really, really, really nice. And definitely looking forward to talking about your B2B concept and how you get people moving that is sustainable, but also affordable in their regard. Cause I'm all about, breaking down barriers to entry for people, man. Like, of course, I love working one-on-one. I want to work with people in mass, but whatever I can do to help get people active, whether that is through they watch a YouTube video and they find it informative, or it's through an online platform that is curated to them, like I'm all for that, man. So hearing that makes me very excited because you're increasing the reach of people that can, readily access you, which is really, really cool.
Agreed. Yeah, I can't imagine. I'm sure you get this all the time where you'll receive a message on Instagram, Facebook, or just a text from a friend like, "Hey, listen, I know I haven't bought your app, or I haven't, signed up for your services or anything like that. Like maybe money's tight, or something's going on in life or whatever. But I've been moving more than you. I've been exercising more because of you. I've been motivated more because of you. I decided to try intermittent fasting because I saw a video of yours, etc. Like I just want you to know that you're really making a difference. And yes, would I love a sale? Of course I would.
Of
Like
course.
this is whatever. But at the end of the day, I set out for this to be something that actually made a difference in my pocket of the world and my influence in the world, like yourself. So it's very satisfying to hear those messages, regardless. And that's the whole plan, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, hearing those little messages, even if it's something simple, like I made healthier choices in my day to day, or I've been getting up earlier, like little life habit changes, like hearing those things, not to get outside, but like it makes me feel really good. It makes me, brings a little tear to my eyes. And it's like, man, like there are really positive things happening from the things that we're doing, and people are making, changes in their life, and ultimately they're going to help them. And so that's what it's all about, man.
I totally agree with you, man. And for what it's worth, I split my time, by the way, between like my 9 to 5 job is a tech sales rep in New York City, right? So that's my bread and butter from a earnings perspective. Then I have this side venture, which is online coaching. So that and that sort of thing. I did this and I started this because I knew, regardless of what I was doing for my 9 to 5, even if I'm good at it, even if I'm making X, Y, and Z amount of money, I can't I can't sit still, and I can't I can't all this knowledge and this information that can help other people. I can't just let it be. And I imagine for you as well. I think I heard you in your last episode, you kind of talking about, how it just sort of emanates from you naturally. And that's beautiful, man. That's really it's really like a great sentiment. And a lot of people feel that way where they want to do something good for the world. And I know there's plenty of other people out there that are in, great shape, and they could teach, and they could, but they don't put it to practice. Nothing against them, by the way.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that at all. Like everybody has their own life. But the goal, I think that the thing that you and I share is, how do we make the 80% necessary to get people consistently moving, making slightly better choices, 1% better every day, whatever it may
Yes.
be. How do we get that information, that motivation, and really the psychology out there to the masses, and then those that are most hungry and ready to absorb that and take it, they have access to it, right? That's the key. And you're fighting against a lot of other trainers and coaches and big fitness industry that wants to, oh, I shouldn't say it like this. Like, I don't want to say something controversial, but there is a necessity for industries to confuse the consumer, because if you are confused and they provide the answer, if they provide the problem and the solution, or even create the problem and the solution, then you are hooked on them, right?
You
It's
are
like a dealer.
100% right.
Yeah, I'm preaching to the choir, I'm sure, but there's an aspect where it's like a dealer gives you a free sample and then you like it, you come back for it. It's the same, it's like same concept, almost like an abusive relationship where the abuser they string you along just enough. They treat you poorly, and then they give you that little dose of like, hey,
Yes.
I love you. I'm sorry. This, I got you. I'm going to take care of you. And then it's like, oh, okay, I can fix this person. It's almost like that. That was a really weird parallel that I drew for the first time, but I think it makes sense, and it's really unhealthy for us, for folks to have that dependency in that relationship with big fitness, if you will.
I really like that. I've never heard it explained that way, but that makes perfect sense. And you're in good company here in that regard. I don't know how much you've dove into like my philosophy, sir, on like my website and things I've talked about, but one thing that I always preach, I'm trying to shift the culture of physical fitness and health and how we look at it. And so an area that I try and, I guess I'll say, specialize in, because I think there's a gap in the market for it, is there's a gap between the physical therapy world and the strength and conditioning world. When I say strength and conditioning, I do mean the athletic population, but ultimately training for people is strength and conditioning, right? Resistance training and aerobic based training. And so
Yeah.
the disconnect I see there is, like you said, and I'll be optimistic. I'll be rose colored lenses. I think most fitness people, what they do it because they genuinely think they're doing the right thing and they're trying to help people. Obviously, in any industry, whether it's, from garbage men to doctors, right? There's quacks and there's people that will cut corners to make a buck, for sure. I've met people in the fitness industry like that. They're just, cutthroat, little gross in their nature. But most people are doing it for the right reasons in their head. But when I like dive into the literature, when I dive into, even if they want to use anecdotal experience, I got plenty. A lot of what we do in professions, and I've been guilty of it myself as a coach, like you said, you create a problem. I'll give an example, right? I'll take heat. I don't care. I've talked about it before. I think a lot of things that are done in the chiropractic and the physical therapy world, and I've talked to people with these degrees and in these fields, are not necessary and are outdated. And then when you dive into the literature on like, why do they do this technique or why do they do this manipulation? And it's like either research that was done and doesn't really correlate well, like on cadavers, or it's just like some guy said it one day and it's like, that's what we do. And that's kind of dogma and you follow it. And that's the industry. And, someone comes in, your hips are rotated and you're like, oh, I feel weird. My hips rotated. This professional with a degree, with a sense of power, in a position of, elevated status, who hopefully you trust, because that's why you're going there. He says, this is your issue, without any particular rationale that would make sense in today's literature. So now I've created a problem. I've given a name to something for you. And now I also have the solution for your problem. And now you're dependent on me to fix it. Yep. And so when I hear that narrative, that rings true and I've had to deconstruct that for a lot of clients, where they're like, I've had back pain for a decade. And it's like, okay, you've been going to a chiropractor or a PT. And I love PTs. I have plenty of friends that are them, that are kind of shifting the narrative. And I'm like, how have you been? And they're like, well, I feel better when I go, but when I don't go, it sucks. And it's like, do you see the issue here? Maybe it's like you're constantly going, getting your neck adjusted. Like, how many times are you going to get your neck cranked until maybe something's fixed, quote unquote? Yeah. So yeah, definitely.
That's really well said, man. I'm with you. Like from a holistic perspective, I do see that I'm a big fan of chiropractic, modern chiropractic these days. And I love the origin story, but I totally agree with you when you're not continuously learning or staying up on current literature, current holistic healing itself. And I'm not saying holistic healing from like a naturopath perspective per se, nothing against them in particular, but when you're not taking into consideration all of the sciences as much as possible, even neuroscience and the like, there's a danger of being pigeonholed. And then when you also, what do they say? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That happens even in family doctors' offices every single day, when the doctor is the elite, is the top, the god of the office, so to speak. Again, nothing against him or her at all. This happens to all people in power or it's tempted. Then the nurses look up to you, the staffs look up to you. You can't be challenged, and then it's a slow burn until you realize, oh my gosh, like I can't be corrected. And even once you realize that, it's so hard to come back from it. And that plays out in all different types of arenas, in all different types of industries, including this. But it's particularly destructive within the industry of health, wellness, and basically people living, dying, and existing with a high quality of life.
Yeah. The thing I always go back to, and I don't care if I say it all the time ad nauseum, it's such a great statement, is don't be married to ideas. For my young professionals, even my veterans out there, it's like, you are not your ideas. You've learned them, or maybe you constructed them from gathering information from a collection of people, but treat your ideas as if there's something that can die off, advance, or be maintained over time, right? So you should always be poking and prodding at them, seeing where you can update yourself, staying up to date on whatever you can, listening to your friends, listening to people you disagree with, right? There's a lot of people who I think, say some silly stuff online. I follow them because, it's always good to understand your argument. It's always good to understand your argument of your, not opponent, but someone that you have a disagreement with. And every now and again, you might hear something, you might learn something, and be like, you know what? I got to give credit to this person on this one instance.
Yeah.
So you got to be open to change, man.
Oh, I'm totally with you, man. The divide and conquer methodology really dates back to the earliest records of history. When an emperor wanted to come in and take over, one, you start war, but then two, once you actually conquer, you divide and conquer. Like you actually like separate. Excuse me. The divide is the first step. You actually create division, whether it's real or fictional. Then once you have two parties that are fighting against each other, it's more easy to take over. Mm-hmm. That principle applies even in modern era when you have, like, after slavery in the United States, you have the free the former slave population, you have the poor Southern population, and then you have the North. Well, the South did I shouldn't even say it this way, but they did a masterful job from an intellectual and a strategic perspective, immoral, unethical, and horrible, but they did a masterful job of understanding that, listen, these people are going to realize that they have so much more in common than they have separately, to quote Maya Angelou. And by propagating this narrative that they are each other's enemy and not us trying to control them, then we are going to be able to more easily manipulate. That plays out all the time now in the modern era, from especially in a world where all of our basic needs are taken care of, and our sense of purpose and reason for waking up in the morning and serving others and these sorts of things, it's being diminished day by day because everything's being automated. Mm-hmm. Artificial intelligence that's something that freaks me out, to be completely honest with you,
it's
and like what it's going to mean for our world. Yeah, 5-10 years from now, I don't know what the world's going to look like. Much worse or much better, I'm not sure. But the point I'm circling around here is that when it comes to people being separated and not on the same team, and most of all, not having a sense of purpose and responsibility in their life, things can go awry very quickly, and they can be manipulated very quickly. And that's what I think is so important for what the work you and I do, to help people take fitness, take exercise, take eating consciously, strategic restriction while balanced enjoyment, and having a cocktail, having food, having whatever here and there. That is so important to a person's psyche. That is so important to a person's sense of taking responsibility for their own outcome, and really their overall quality of life. And I can go on about that for days, but I'll stop there, just because I think I just think it's so important for people to realize, if you're feeling that you don't have a reason to wake up in the morning or a sense of purpose, a great thing to do outside of your job, outside of your family, outside of everything that's going on, and something you can control today, is how you treat your body, how you move, how you eat, etc. And man, that can literally change everything for you. That can be the keystone pursuit, the keystone habit that changes everything for you starting now.
Yeah. And on your divide and conquer analogy, like how, historically, conquerors and different people have used it on purpose. I feel like in the fitness industry, obviously there's bad actors and charlatans. I think we do it to each other unconsciously. Whereas we form these little tribes of there's the modern keto tribe, which is the liver king side of things, where it's you need to eat liver organs or you're dying. But take my supplement, that's fine. Or you need to, you should only eat vegetables. Or there's, the side where the seed oils and vegetables are bad for you. And so us as fitness pros can't even agree on things. And so I can only imagine for the general population person, the single mom with 4 kids, how the hell is she supposed to make a decision? And it's not something as simple as do I take this street to work or this street to work, right? Where either way you're getting to work. It's well, this guy's saying that this thing is killing me, but then this guy's saying I shouldn't squat because I'm going to hurt my back. And it's there's so many conflicting arguments, and that ultimately are, when they say them, they have these detrimental effects. It's I think it scares people, honestly. And that is what I think is a huge barrier to exercise, is people's fear of being injured, and it's their health. You only get one body, one go at this game called life, man. And so people get afraid, and they're I guess I'll just not do anything until I maybe hear a little bit of better information, because everyone's pointing in different directions.
Oh, you're spot on. I heard something from like my junior college psychology professor back in the day where she said, knowledge is basically just memory. And memory has a starting point for everyone, meaning we have like this nucleus of thoughts, innate, desires or innate capabilities as babies. And as we grow, we remember things, we form it into habit, etc. And the more we know, the more we're able to connect to what would otherwise be abstract or unfamiliar information. But now it's more easy to connect. It's more easy to grow that nucleus, etc. So from a fitness perspective, there has been this sort of pinball, like you said, this pinball effect of like everybody's trying to vie for another person's attention from a business perspective. Like I am, I'm the best trainer, I'm the best coach, I'm the best dietitian, I have the best solution, keto, carnivore, vegan, Whole30, all these sorts of things. And the question I always ask people when they say which one is best is, well, if you know people that have lost and gained weight on every diet ever out there, that should be your answer, right? And then I break it down a little bit more from the literature perspective, and I really love your brain, man. I love the way you're thinking, and your continuous kind of learning aspect of like the modern literature on the subject. A lot of people don't do that. When you look at like meta-analyses, which for your listeners, if they don't already know, is effectively a study of studies. It's a study of multiple studies that have been done on a particular subject, and they aggregate the data together to form a more comprehensive conclusion of whatever it may be. When it comes to the basics of what causes fat loss, what causes fat gain, I promise you people, there is universal consensus. Yes, hormones have something to do with it. Yes, not everybody's is the same. Yes, stress and these things have a factor. Not all, foods are created equal, so to speak. But the truth of the matter is, if you're burning more calories than you consume, you are going to lose body fat. If you are consuming more calories than you burn, you will put on body fat and likely more muscle as well if you're adding strength training in. That is a huge fundamental truth that we have to demystify, because I'm telling you right now, people are taking advantage of people by the thousands every single day, teaching them that it's not your fault that it's not your fault that you're eating these many calories and you're not losing weight. It's like, no, your basal metabolic rate probably is just lower than other people for whatever factors. Maybe you diet cycled for many times in a row and that sort of thing, and that's okay. We're not blaming you. We just have to look at the data for what it is. And we have to look at the truth instead of somebody lying to you and telling you what you want to hear and saying, hey, like, we're just going to give you some, apple cider vinegar and, we're going to give you a box full of food for 60 days and that's going to cure all your problems. Yeah, you'll probably lose weight. You definitely will. But there's repercussions to that, because what's to come afterwards?
Yes.
There's no contingency plan. You have not been taught how to manage your life after the fact, right? So I'm sorry, I'm kind of stepping off my soapbox here, but I get worked up. Yeah, I get so worked up when it comes to the intentional and unintentional manipulation and irresponsibility that people who have a responsibility to take care of the population that they serve don't, and it boils my blood.
Yeah, the food one is a good one to go to, because again, outside of like some random people online that are going to say your hormones are out of balance and all that, stuff, for which again, there may be a small, very, very small minority of people that's true for, but most people know the calories in, calories out one is a true statement, right? The thing I always go to, okay, that's, to me, that's surface level. It's just saying it, right? Like I tell people all the time as a young coach, it is, right? You just need to burn more calories or eat less calories than you're taking in. It's that simple. And in principle, yes. And the analogy I used, and again, it's not a one-to-one, but I think there's a lot of psychology behind it. It's like, if you don't want to be poor, just make more money, right? So like in a vacuum, right? And I'm not saying this at all. I'm just saying this in a vacuum. If you want to make more money in life, you need to make more money. But saying that statement doesn't do anything. And so I think a lot of where we disagree as fitness pros and like wellness coaches and all this is the meat and potatoes that goes underneath that surface level, where some people might say like, I like the guy for the motivation's sake, right? But I disagree with him. I think on some things it's like the David Goggins approach, right? Where it's like, stop being fucking lazy and stop being this. And it's like for certain people that works, right? And there's times where I hear him and I get hyped. Don't get me wrong, man. I love me some Goggins early in the morning to get me going. But for the general population person, like that's not a resounding message. Then on the flip side, always saying there's no personal responsibility ever whatsoever, I think is also disingenuous. So I think both extremes get kind of caught up where it's like, hey, let's look at, your psychology. Like, is there a reason why, you're having this pattern? Let's look at your lifestyle. Like, are you single mom of 4 and you work 2 different jobs? Do you have trauma or abuse? Do you use food as a coping mechanism? Do you have a genetic propensity towards, being more so on the obesogenic side, and what factors can we manipulate in the environment instead of just saying, eat less, move more. And if you don't, well, that sucks to suck, buttercup, figure it out.
Yep. You're dude, spot on, man. That's why I typically kind of approach, we basically have 2 primary service offerings, the do it yourself and then the coaching. Because I know the coaching is touching on all of those things that you're mentioning, like the day-to-day communication of why am I doing this? Why can't I, why can't I prioritize this? Or why am I making bad decisions at this time? Okay, let's break that down. What are the thought processes that you're going through when this is happening? What are the triggers beforehand? What are you thinking? What time of day is it? Where are you in the house? Did you just, are you in a particular emotional state? What is going on prior to that? Identifying it, replacing the activity, etc. And you're spot on. Also with David Goggins, he's an archetype, right? Him, like those guys, like
I say he has. It was funny. I was telling my client the other day. He has what I call the Jordan gene or the Kobe gene. He has that he has that dog in him, as the kids say. Man, he's got that mentality where like nothing you will do will ever stop me. I am motivated and disciplined beyond human recognition.
Yep, and he has a lived experience that is just hard to replicate.
You can't.
And it's impossible. I heard the guy meditates 2 hours a day. Like he stretches, I think, for another 2. It's just he's living a lifestyle that most people can't maintain, nor would they be happy doing so. Yes. And with that said, like you said, he is an archetype that shows us what we're capable of, in a good way or in a disciplined way or whatever it may be. And I also disagree with a lot of the things he says. Like, you could just do this. It's like, yes, we could theoretically, but that's all theoretical. That doesn't play out for the masses. I think people like you and me, we're representative of like middle class America, middle class globally, whatever it may be, where we can sort of connect and understand the plight of most people, meet them where they are, and understand how to reverse engineer from here's the outcome that we're seeking. Mm-hmm. Let's look back throughout your job, your family, your priorities, your goals, etc. Let's find a path, a schedule, a system of activities that can get you there within a reasonable amount of time. And also, let's create a mechanism, I call it the repair shop, that if and when something does go wrong, we have a means to right that wrong within a reasonable amount of time without too much damage, etc., etc. And that's really how it breaks down, right? It's like, okay, what do I want? How do I get there? But not only how do I get there, but if something doesn't go according to plan, what's my contingency? What's my backup plan? How do I correct this? And that's where I think a lot of people, including myself for most of my life, went awry. I gave up because I felt it wasn't worth the effort, when indeed it was just a couple of strategies I needed to adjust with the same amount of effort. And then I saw the results.
Yeah, sometimes I tell people like having a coach, yes, the programming is important and everything, but ultimately it's just you need someone in your corner for accountability and for a guided plan. Like that's really like what, a big portion of what we do. And when people have that, accountability metric and someone to like kind of help guide you gently along the way, like that to them makes all the difference. The squats, the deadlifts, the bench press, like all that stuff is fun and gets me excited. But ultimately it's like, how am I helping you form those behaviors, or how am I setting you up for success to have the autonomy to form those behaviors over time and ultimately lead you to success. And then we can do the fun, different stuff with the exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. There's many ways to get in shape. And a lot, a good friend of mine who's a very successful online fitness coach as well for men over 40, he put it to me very simply. He said, you can follow most programs. If you followed it to a T, you get results.
Yeah.
Almost every program.
Absolutely.
And I thought, that's a really great way of putting it. So what is the differentiator, right? It's the differentiator is that personal touch of working with clients and actually being with them day to day in their corner, understanding their unique place on this earth and
Yep.
priorities, etc., and helping them move along that path rather than a cut and paste of what you think is the most efficient way possible. Efficiency means nothing if people are so burnt out that they're not going to do it.
Now, tell you, what are you currently doing exercise wise? Like, what is kind of like your thing that you like to do? And like, how did you get into like working out personally for yourself? I always like to hear how like people's fitness origin story.
Yeah. So I do stripping mostly, and no.
Tuesday night special. Where are you at?
I seriously, yeah. Queens is a wild place, man. But no, I probably make more money that way, to be honest with you. We just watched the Chippendale story, by the way. That's you gotta be careful.
Yes.
Be careful who's paying you. Anyways, sorry, my brain is kind of like a dog chasing cars or squirrels or whatever. My origin story starts very young. My dad was really big into fitness. He's kind of he's a shorter. The reason I'm giving his biometric, he's a shorter guy. I'm about 6 feet tall. My dad's about 5'5". So I think he had a lot of insecurities growing up about his body and that sort of thing. So he got in the gym. He that was his way of solving his confidence problem. He got in the gym. At one point, I think he was benching 300, squatting 400 at 5'5". It's really impressive.
Let's
For just
go,
kind
Dad.
of like just like a blue collar guy, was working in a factory, just impressive dude, all natural.
Those
all
are
that kind
some
of
of the
stuff.
strongest guys, man. You meet some of those guys that work with their hands, bro. You shake their hand like, oh, you could lift some shit, man. You could.
Oh yeah, and you just add the dad strength right after that.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
I think he was saying like when my mom was pregnant with me, that was just like some of his best lifting times, because it's like he's like that primal instinct of
Yeah.
like I'm gonna be a father. I got to be big, strong, and protect my family, and he's traditional in that way. So it was cool. It's we laugh about it, but at the same time, I really was influenced by physical fitness, his orientation towards that, and I'm very, very grateful, amongst other characteristics that he and my mom have. But that was my main influence, and I was always like fit. I back and forth. I played sports growing up and that sort of thing. But in my 20s, this was like kind of the pivotal moment for me. In my 20s, I had a long-term relationship that was very unhealthy towards the end, and what came with that was depression, kind of hopelessness, directionlessness, if that's a full word, and really, physical fitness was put on the back burner for some time. So, this is kind of the story that I think is the most moving and pivotal for most people that I talk to in my life. Back in like 2017, I saw the writing on the wall. There were some issues that we were dealing with, and I realized, what, like, I'm not sure we're going to make it. We're living together. We're making, I'm making a menial wage at a corporate job that I just don't even like, and we're making enough money to pay our bills, but we're terrible with our money. We're in debt. I'm out of shape. I'm drinking every night to go to sleep. I got to change something, man. I remember distinctly, I got out of the shower and, got the towel around. I'm looking at myself. And at the time I wouldn't consider myself like fat, right? Like chubby or anything like that. I considered myself soft.
Hmm.
It was enough little body fat on me that I was like, dude, I don't even recognize you. All the hard work that you put in your life, all the intention that you have, and the desire to make a change in your life and look as good as you want to, and you're not living up to your own expectation. And for every other person, that's different, and I respect that. But for me,
Yeah.
in my standard, I thought, man, this is not who you are and what you are capable of doing. So that was a really pivotal moment for me. That moment in the mirror. So what I did was, I read this book called The Miracle Morning by I think it's Hal Elrod or something like that. It's a very short read. I think you can even get it for free or really cheap on Amazon. But the premise of the book was that every morning, for anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour and a half or whatever, you do like 7 things.
Okay.
You wake up and you meditate or you sit in silence. You what is it called? I'll just try to recite it. You meditate, sit in silence. You read, you exercise, even for like 30 seconds. You write, and you do something else. The point is that that basically set up this morning routine where every single day I was contributing to my mental and physical health in a tangible way. Reading a nonfiction book, I was updating my financial budget, I was journaling, I was meditating, like sitting in stillness, and I was actually moving my body.
Yeah.
That I can't even tell you how big that moment and that setting up that schedule was to me, because that once I had that morning every day, the rest of the day was productive. The rest of the day, I was off to a good start. I was thinking about the right things. I was immersing myself with the right influences on social media and friends and conversations. I flourished in my sales career from that point on. And she and I, my ex and I, eventually broke up. But regardless of the nature of like how difficult it was to like move on from that relationship, I had no furniture, no TV in my house. I was like a 1-bedroom place, me and my little Yorkie. And I my life changed from that moment because I was able to essentially compound my activity, my health, my finances, etc., because I was contributing to it every single day. So that was a very, very long way of answering your question, like where did my fitness journey start? But I felt like the greater context was important because that was my why. Was I need to live up to what I know that I'm capable of and I know that I'm worth.
That's cool, man. I think a lot of people can relate to that are in like the fitness industry, where you almost had like two bursts of like your fitness journey. The first one is from your family, right? Your father, you're just an active kid growing up. That's what you love to do. And the second one is just big life changes where you had kind of like a revolution in your mindset and your priorities, which, you know, I've talked about in my podcast before. I can surely relate to. I grew up as a very active kid, aspirations of joining the military. Life had other plans, got sick, and then from there on out, my perspective on life and fitness changed from my medical concerns. And so, you know, having that dual thread of like, yeah, you grew up active and healthy, which is awesome, but then, you know, life is going to happen at some point, and how do you adjust your parameters from there on out?
Yeah, dude, very well said. I never considered that two-part or two-pronged approach to growth, right? Like there's always the concept like you're always moving towards or against your potential, so to speak. You're never staying still. You're moving towards or against. And I thought that's a really great perspective. I'm going to think about that after the show. That's for sure.
I got you, man. See, we learn from each other, which is awesome. Now, how did you exactly get into coaching per se? So you got this background, you're making life changes. Is this something that you started out at a young age, or is it something that came with the transformation of your life? Like, how'd you get into it?
A little of both. I was a very curious kid from the beginning. I mentioned to you before this episode, I've had a couple of podcasts in the past. I write. I'm just I love taking in complicated information, synthesizing it, and pushing it back out to people in a digestible way that they can understand and then build from themselves. I was very heavily influenced by someone by the name of Dave Ramsey, the financial guru. Are you familiar with him at all?
I feel like I've heard the name.
A very quick synopsis on him for yourself and for your listeners is he is essentially like he's like a businessman through and through who decades ago basically like racked up like $1 million or $2 million in debt, declared bankruptcy, and then realized never again am I going to put myself and my family in this situation. And he developed this methodology called the 7 baby steps that helps literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, including myself, get out of debt through the system, through the methodology. There's the foundation. There's the foundation of my next point. So I was very heavily influenced by him, and I thought, you know, there are writers and coaches and influencers out there that sort of synthesize this information in a really good way. And I've learned from them, but I still feel like there's a lot of gaps to fill from a step-by-step perspective. So I set out to become the Dave Ramsey of fitness. From a methodology perspective, taking the fundamentals of what we know to be true, has universal scientific consensus, creating a plan that is simple enough to work, but also flexible enough to reach the masses. And if you follow X amount of steps, you will effectively see lasting change in your life from a fitness and a mental perspective as well. So that is what was the idea that I had been mulling around for about 6 months to a year. And then through some conversations with some friends that were already in the industry, they kind of helped hook me up with some business coaches, put together a plan and a strategy, and here I am.
That is why I love that, by the way. That is why I always tell my exercise science folks that you need to take some business classes, take some courses outside of school, or maybe minor in something like entrepreneurship. I was very fortunate at FAU where I got my undergrad that I got to minor in entrepreneurship. It was only a 12 credit minor. I finished one class short, so I only did 9 of the 12, but the information and experience I got from those credit courses, I still use to this day, and it helped me launch my business. Kind of like how you said, where I think a big struggle with trainers is that, and I've realized this too of myself, which has been extremely helpful, is they know how to do their job. They know how to do it well once they become, a couple years in the game, they got competence. But if you ask them like, hey, what are your processes for, your algorithm for writing programming or your algorithm for lead generation, they'll look at you and like, they know how to do it, but they can't really put it down on paper. And so they're very inefficient at their job. They're good at it, but it takes them a very long time to get everything done. Or they're like, you look at how they're like getting clientele and it's like, dude, like you're wasting so many hours and so much, energy and brain power. Like you need to start formulating a plan. You need to start formulating systems and processes that make it easier for you so you can actually do the thing you love, which is work with people one-on-one. And so you're coming into the game having kind of like, it sounds like that logical business mindset, which seems like you kind of lean towards, and like, I am making the process for my clientele. So that way they can find a way to automate, systematize their life and their goals. And that way they can ultimately be successful.
Absolutely. James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, wrote, we don't rise to our goals, we fall to our systems. And I think that was a really great quote that I once heard. Also, are my current habits leading to my desired future? Those are two of my favorites of his.
That's good.
And his point is very simple. It's we can't live on motivation or optimism. We have to create systems that are reverse engineered from what the desired outcome is. And that's really the methodology that I've built in the Rebuild Fitness company. And I'll explain that later as to like how it breaks down and how it aligns with this. But the point of the matter is that behavior, right? Working out, eating right, thinking better about everything, changing our relationship with food, all these sorts of things. Behavior is dictated by three primary factors: a prompt or a trigger, the ability to do something, how hard or difficult it is, and the motivation behind it. And I always give this example because I think these two examples, the first example would be if you walk into your kitchen and you see a jar of M&Ms in a clear jar sitting on your countertop. Well, you walk into your kitchen and you see the jar. That's your prompt or your trigger, right? Boom, I see it. You, the ability to consume those M&Ms is very easy. So boom, prompt is high, ability is high. Yeah. And then your motivation, hey, those taste really good. I'm hungry. I want a snack or whatever. Motivation is also high. Maybe let's say it's middle. Boom, boom, boom. Everything is there. Like you're going to follow through on that most likely. If you want to reduce those factors and maybe you're having an issue eating too many M&Ms, there's a number of ways you can do that. You can reduce or eliminate the prompt altogether by either taking the M&Ms out of the house, although abstinence of anything can breed bad results sometimes, unless it's an extreme situation. Yeah. You can put it in you can put it in the garage. You can put it somewhere that's more difficult to find, where you might go get it 5 times out of 10 instead of 10 times out of 10. Whatever. Make it more difficult to get that thing, right? So eliminate or reduce the prompt. The ability to it, you can put the M&Ms in a color jar or a jar where you can't actually see it and you forget it's there. Maybe it's in the kitchen, but it's just like in one of the containers, and you maybe shift it up or tell your spouse to like move it around so you don't see it or something like that, right? And again, or like you can tighten it up or something like that. Again, make it more difficult to get it, right? And then the third would be the motivational piece of consuming the M&Ms, which would be, hey, maybe I'll listen to some podcasts like this one, or maybe I'll, listen to an ebook or talk to my friends about dieting or whatever. You can actually change the internal ways of thinking your motivation. But the thing about motivation is that is a really hard thing to change by itself. We are motivated to do certain things often because of just our evolutionary makeup, and it's built into us as human beings.
1000%.
We shouldn't feel guilty about like wanting M&Ms or like, what's wrong with me? It's like, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's just the environment that is around you, the timing, the emotional state, all these sorts of things that you could make adjustments to and see better results.
Yeah.
Right. So that was something that's popularized by BJ Fogg, the PAM model. I don't want to take credit for that, but that's the first one. And the second one would be going to the gym, right? That's a behavior that we all agree is a good thing to do, or working out at home or whatever may be. Well, when it comes to the three aspects of the behavior, prompt, ability, motivation, we always start with motivation, and we usually just stop there. Okay, I am really motivated at the gym because I'm feeling out of shape. I'm feeling like I want to get strong. I'm like, I want to have a good body for the summer, whatever. Okay, great. That's temporary. That waxes and wanes based on the day, your emotion, how tired you are, how hungry you are. Maybe you lose 10 pounds and you're like, I'm fine. I don't really need anything else besides this, whatever. That you cannot rely on motivation alone.
Yeah.
What you need to do is set up an environment, what I call the what, when, and where of exercise. And that effectively is, what program am I going to follow, right? Like, I need a structure. I can't just go to the gym and wing it every day. I can't just go home and expect that I'm going to follow a program. It's going to work my entire body. I can't just wing it every day. Yep. What program am I going to follow? What time of day and what days of the week am I going to do this? And set those as your holy time, like it's a meeting that you can't miss. And then, of course, where? Is it going to be home? Is it going to be the gym? And one thing I always say to people is, don't pick a gym because it's the best facility you've ever seen. Because if it's too difficult, or it's not fun to drive to and back after work or before or whatever, you are more likely not to go. So I'd rather you work out at home and consistently do it than not. So the what, when, and where, that's where that fills in. Deep breath.
No, that's awesome. And yeah, I like how you outline, like, I think you're right with fitness. It's removing barriers to go. And then sometimes with diet, it's like sometimes putting in some healthy barriers to help you with things. And like the gym one's a big one, man, where like, I'm very fortunate. I have an LA Fitness, like literally a 5-minute jog from my house. And so
nice.
Like, I'm so fortunate where like, I don't really, LA Fitness, cool gym, but I don't really like this one as much, but it's so convenient. It's like hard to let go. And so it just, every time if I'm like have a late night and I like don't work out at the gym that I train out of, I always have that as a backup, versus if it was like 20, 30 minutes away. And I know some people, maybe that is your closest gym. So understandably so.
Sure.
Putting yourself in the best position of like, I have my gym clothes prepared. I have my program ready. I have it on my calendar, and I have the gym that is easiest to get to. That usually is a good place to start to help people start that fitness journey.
Absolutely. Build a good team. Build a good team of prompts, ability, motivation. Build a good system that has a high chance of succeeding just by its very nature of the way it's set up. And then you won't have to rely so much on these emotional swings up and down and motivation alone, which is important. It's an important part of behavior, but it's just one piece, and oftentimes a very, very unreliable one. So that's we're speaking the same language, man. And I think if we go long enough and reach enough people with this message, it can be extremely beneficial to those who have spent their entire lives. And if you're a listener, you spent your most of your life or whatever, feeling like, man, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong. Why do I consistently make bad decisions? It's like, yes, of course, there's psychological factors of maybe I had this relationship with food or working out, or we weren't like this as a family, of course. But everybody's on a spectrum of all of these factors. You might be really strong in one area where they're not so strong in another. And I know that applied to me. If you stack the deck in your favor, you will see and get the results that you are much more likely to continuously go, get results, and by the way, change the course of your life.
Yes, I always say it's not a black and white of like you're going to do it and you're not. It's what can I do, like you said, to stack the deck. What can I do to increase the probability that I'm going to go more often than not, or more often than I used to go? And it ultimately goes back to your thing with you're talking about with motivation. One thing I have talked about with my mentor who's been on the podcast a couple of times, Coach Lucas Woody, is motivation is great. You should definitely leverage it. It's that thing. It's when you listen to CT Fletcher at 6 a.m. and you get all pumped to go to the gym or whatever, whatever gets you going. But there's going to be days in life where you do not feel motivated. And so leverage it when you can, but when you can't, I always say lean on purpose, lean on discipline, lean on the habits and the systems that you've created to get you going. And the analogy I use is like, motivation is like, let's say you're in a forest and it's nighttime and you can't really see. Motivation is like the flame that illuminates. It's bright. It helps you see very clearly. It's very energetic. But purpose, habits, discipline, however you want to outline those concepts, is the path on the floor that you can see. And so if you have that bright light, but you have a bunch of crossroads going everywhere on the floor, you're like, I don't know where to go with this motivation, with this energy. Chances are your actions are not going to reflect what they should. But if you have a clear, distinct path and you pair that with your motivation, that is going to be a great opportunity for you to start adopting these behaviors and be successful.
Oh man, that's such a good analogy. I love that. I as coaches and trainers, it's like you have to create these anecdotes, these analogies to like tie what seems to be complicated or unfamiliar to the familiar. And that's how knowledge is built. But like, that's such a good one, man. I have one called, I wrote this article called the sweet spot of sustainable progress. And this is really my mantra overall is if you, the goal is not to, for 30 days or 60 days, be like, balls to the wall. I'm fucking going. Let's change, let me lose 30 pounds and, probably in an unhealthy way. Cause you probably shouldn't be losing 30 pounds in a month unless you have that much to lose, and then some. But the point is that we need to, there's two imaginary lines. There's a line of progress where you have to do just enough to see change, right? Whether that's weight loss, muscle growth, changing your dietary habits, just enough of those actions to get above that line, because below it, you're basically regressing, right? Stay just above that line, but then there's a second line up here that is the burnout line. And if you do it too much and too hard and too restrictive, then you're going to be like, man, I can't sustain this. Let me just, I'm going to start over, right? It's that space in between that, by the way, for people, it can work like this. It's like a wave, essentially. If you stay in that space, which by the way is a huge spectrum of activity and intensity and restrictiveness and whatever, where you're still progressing even 0.5% a day or less than that, you can be happy. You can feel like this. You can establish a new identity of this is what I do every day, every week, every month, every year of my life. And this is just part of who I am, rather than just constantly cycling intensity, crash, crash, or I'm not doing enough and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So crash, and yo-yo dieting, all these sorts of things.
Yes.
The sweet spot of sustainable progress is really the place where all of us need to be in every aspect of life, especially when it comes to fitness or anything else that is really, really important, like relationships, career development, etc.
Yeah, I feel like people definitely go to the ends of extremes. And I think it's a human thing, and maybe more so it's an American thing, because I think we're the land of extremes, right? That's just how we are, like through and through. As a New Yorker, I'm sure you can understand that, right?
Sure.
So, people set out and they do it. And I appreciate my clients when I meet them and they're new and they're excited and they're like, let me do everything all at once. And I'm like, I do not want to remove that motivation from you. But for most people, it's going to set you up for failure. And there's times to be extreme, right? Sometimes, like when a client, if I can like gauge your psychology right, and I'm like, oh, you're someone who needs some wins early and that's going to carry you, cool. We'll be a little bit more aggressive in our programming approach or whatever. But for a lot of people, I call it, they hit the fuck it button, where they do all these really great things, right?
Yeah.
Maybe for 2 weeks. Then they have like a bad week. They get sick. They're really stressed at work. They like didn't have time to meal prep that night. Like something in their life happens, and maybe they still do like 6 out of the 10 behaviors that like we set up, or ones they've added on their own, which is still fucking amazing. Because before you were doing 0 out of 10, but they look at the 4 they didn't do or the 2 they didn't do, and they're like, this is stupid. What am I doing? Why am I spending this money? And they press that button and then they revert back to doing nothing again. And so I try and use a little bit of like psychology with my clients of like, there's going to be ups and downs. I like that. You said like, there's like those parameters, those like upper thresholds. I'm like, we'll creep up there from every now and again when it's necessary, but like, let's stay here, man. Let's stay in kind of this nice middle ground. You'll feel better. Won't have as much like resets, and it's going to be ultimately better for your progress in the long run.
Absolutely. You'll see, I'll give you the link to the website where you folks can read my articles and that sort of thing. But you'll see in that article I have like a diagram where that's exactly how it moves. Right? It's the threshold always moves up and down in different seasons in life of how much I'm willing to. What is my nature of progress or my threshold of progress, and then what is my threshold of burnout? Because you might be able to tolerate more at different seasons of life, and
Yeah.
maybe not in others. So it's going to sort of like a like a stock, in the stock market, it's going to go up and down accordingly. But the trend ideally is going upwards, very slow, maybe even like a 5-degree angle or 3-degree angle. But ideally, if the goal is to establish it over the course of your lifetime, that is 3 degrees every year or 1% every year is really, really massive over the course of time, and that compounds really fast. So the other point I was going to make about kind of the fuck it zone, right? The fuck it mode. It is a weird thing that we do. But I understand sort of why we do it, because we, at our very core, all human beings have a base desire, and that is to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And there is fear built into our brains, and an ability to detect danger, whether that's real or perceived. And the perceived danger often comes in the form of social danger, fear of failure. And those are very, very, very potent things. Now, Daniel Kahneman was this brilliant researcher and psychologist that essentially showed, he was one of the first to show that we are more afraid to lose something than we are to gain, than we are more optimistic and excited to gain something. And he did kind of like had this cool experiment about like, if you have $50 and you had a 50% chance of losing it, but you had a whatever percent chance of gaining X amount of dollars more, what would you do? And he just showed that like people are more afraid to lose that once they have it. Right.
Yeah. The pain of negative emotion for most people is much higher than the pain of positive emotion. Like you said, it's a survival thing, right? Oh, if I found this piece of fruit, that's great. But if I step on a snake, that could be the end of me and my ancestors,
Absolutely. And I get, so we don't think about it that way. Obviously, like I don't even think about it until I like actually get into brass tacks with people in conversations. I'm like, man, I seem irrationally afraid of this. Why am I so scared? And it's like, okay, let me talk. That's why we talk things out with people that we know and we trust, and we value their opinions so that they can see it more clearly. But I say all of that to say that once we acknowledge that we have these irrational feelings and fears, and that's okay, then we can start actually making progress in identifying and breaking down barriers that otherwise we set up for ourselves and didn't know why we couldn't cross.
Yes.
But it's like anything, you have to acknowledge that you have a problem first. And man, that's a beautiful first step.
Yes, it is. That's the first thing to do, man, is look at it, and hopefully you find a coach that can help you lay out your life a little bit like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so now you've talked about it a little bit. So your company, please correct me if I'm wrong, is called, or the app and the program that you use is called RBLD Fitness, right?
That's right. Yeah. It's pronounced rebuild in the word rebuild. The premise being, kind of like the storyline that I had where I knew my potential, but I had let myself go a bit. And I thought, you know what? I need a fresh start, but I want to rebuild this in a proper way. I don't want to do that same cycle of, I'm really motivated to do something. But like you said, I've got the lamp, right? I got the light in front of me, but I don't have a path.
Yes.
I wanted to build a path that was as straight as possible. And allowed me to kind of explore the area as well. So the point of the matter is, it's spelled RBLD but pronounced rebuild. The reason it's spelled RBLD is because there's 4 primary steps in the programs that I write for people and the coaching philosophy that I have. The first step is reflect, and that is finding your why. What do I really want? Not, okay, I really want to lose 50 pounds. I want to be, I want to have a 6-pack. I want to, be a Greek god and that sort of thing. Yeah, awesome. That's ideal for all of us. But let's face the facts. Like, let's be real. Are we all really going to put in the work and deal with the problems and the restrictions that come with having a body like that?
Yeah.
It's not easy to look like The Rock.
No.
Okay. It's not easy to look like The Rock. And I'm not even saying I have like a banging body or anything. I'm very proud of my body and that sort of thing. But it's not easy to even get here. So let's start with, what do you actually want? What is the bare minimum of like what you're willing to accept as a healthy body, a healthy lifestyle, etc.? Let's start there, and that's reflect. That's stage one. Now we start to reverse engineer from there. Stage two is build a plan, right? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yep.
But what I do with my clients is I effectively do all the basic stuff. Let's start with our biometrics, where are you starting, what's your starting points, measurements, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But from there, let's break down your macro breakdown, your dietary plan, your caloric intake, all these sorts of things. But that's where I implemented what I mentioned before, which is the what, when, and where of exercise and dieting. And here's a little fun fact based on a study from the British Journal of Psychology, I think. In 2001, researchers had like 250 participants, and they had three groups. One group was a control group. The second group was a group that read educational and motivational materials on why exercising is beneficial. And a third group, they read the same materials as the second group, but they just wrote down in a notebook what days of the week they were going to work out. That's all they did. The only difference. The first two groups, weirdly enough, the first group, the control group, exercised at least once that week, 38% of the time. So 38% of that group worked out.
Okay.
The second group, who read the educational materials, they worked out 36% of the time. So a slight decrease, which is kind of strange. But let's just assume maybe there's a small deviation, and it's about the same. It made almost no difference.
Right.
The third group, 91% of participants exercise at least once that week. It's one study. It was for a duration of 2 weeks, but it's a very potent message that simply planning and intending on when you're going to work out and what you're going to do when you do it, it literally, according to this data, doubles your chances or more of following through on it.
It's an action item. It's literally, it's a small thing, but it's an action item of going from the conceptual of reading / you're entering, like there's bias in the sense of like just entering the study. You're probably like, oh, I should be more active. Right. But actually taking the time to sit down, like, no, I'm putting something to paper. I can definitely see how that would be a big jump for people.
Absolutely. So I actually have like a schedule for folks and that sort of thing. And we adhere to it as much as possible. The premise is the same. It's intentionally writing something down, having something to hold yourself accountable to. And again, we don't rise to our goals. We fall to our systems. So that was the premise behind that. That's the premise behind planning. And there's other aspects that go to it. But the third part is learn. This is a very easy one. L for learn is essentially, let's learn the fundamentals of why all of this is important, what your body is, how your body's actually changing because of these activities. And you'll at least not be in the dark of as to why this is important. You can fall back on that when you're feeling those moments of frustration, be like, okay, well now if I do adhere to this diet or I do exercise, I'm actually, this is why I built, this is how body recomposition works, the basics, right? I just call that the springboard. Whatever you do with those basic fundamental that information, you can never learn anything else for the rest of your life. But if you have that fundamentals while you're doing it, man, I just think that's so powerful. And research has showed time and time again that you learn better while you're doing the activities that you're learning about. So that's the learn part. And then the last part is the very easiest. It's do, D for do. So execute, follow through. But there's a lot of psychological aspects to staying the course, so to speak. And I'm sure you could tell as many stories or more than I can about the importance of being able to regulate those moments where you've got the plan in place, you're following through, etc. But those pivotal moments where you're doubting, you're fearing, you've regressed a little bit, or something's happening, and you're on the verge of that fuck it mode. I'm either going to go dig down or I'm going to quit.
Yes.
Which path am I going to take? That piece is probably one of the most important pieces of all of this that we sort of that coaches like ourselves are there to intervene with and remind you of all of the hard work, all of the whys, all of the planning, everything that you're doing is working. If you just stick with it, this is how long it might take. And that is normal. That is okay. You're not doing anything wrong. You're fucking crushing it. And let's keep it up. And by the way, when we do that and they see the results, that is some of the most beautiful, life-changing and fulfilling moments for not just us, but for them as well. I'm so grateful to be able to do that for people.
100%. I love that system, by the way, the reflect, build, learn, and then do. My mantra for my company, and I think it gets misconstrued, but that's okay. It raises some eyebrows so people can inquire more about it. My slogan is "Do the damn thing." It's not to say, I think most people are like, is that a David Goggins kind of thing where it's like, just suck it up and just do it. It's like, no, it means that through working together, through shifting your behavior, through finding different ways to adhere to a program, through learning to be healthier, more fulfilling, have fun in your training program, you're going to find the tools or have the tools and resources to go out and do it regardless, right? Had a crappy day, we're going to find a way to get it done. I had a couple of things fall apart. Maybe I forgot my workout clothes. I find a way to do it. I'm very hungry today, but I'm respecting my body and finding ways to satisfy my hunger, still enjoy my social life, but also find a way to respect and honor my goals. Right. Yeah, and so that is a motto that I carry. And I tell my clients that when they did something successful, or they're like contemplating something, like, hey, go out and do the damn thing. And that reigns true through your business, which is awesome.
1,000%, man. Nike had it right back in the day, right? Just
do it.
There's something really pure and beautiful about the simplicity of that message. As much as I do empathize with the struggles of clients, the most powerful and potent and moving conversations I've had to get me to where I am today are not the ones that coddled my feelings. It's the ones that recognized, listen, Teddy, this is what you said you wanted. I know what you're capable of, and you're doing it. Don't give up now. Don't give up now. And I owe a debt of gratitude I cannot repay to those people. That's what we can do for folks as well. Something, I don't know how much time we have left here, but something I wanted to really just quickly touch on is, this might be an unpopular opinion, restriction, desperation, holding yourself back is good. It's why should we have everything whenever we want without boundaries? Why should we have that? It's not healthy to have that. So when you implement exercise into your daily routine, it's not easy. It's not difficult. Yeah, you feel great afterwards, and research shows very, very clearly as to why from a hormonal perspective. And also there's things called myokines that's in our skeletal muscle that actually goes into your blood when you contract and release your muscles, goes into your blood up to your brain and actually helps you fight depression, sadness, etc. It helps you regulate your mood. It's really, really fascinating. But, I digress. There's a lot of benefits to exercise, but there's this kind of primal concept of restricting yourself from the decadence, the laziness, the otherwise enjoyable things of life. I love a good cocktail, I love cake, I love all these sorts of things, but there's something really good for you to restrict yourselves from it, because guess what? When you actually enjoy those things and have those things, you can enjoy it without guilt. You can enjoy it knowing, hey, I earned this a little bit more. And also, I have set boundaries for myself to respect the good, the decadent, as well as the difficult. Both, I am honoring myself, my life, my health, my worth. And that is something that I say to, especially to people that have kids. If they are, they often, one of the first things, I'm sure your clients say this as well, I want my kids to be proud of me. I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to live a long life for my kids. I want them, all these sorts of things. Okay, awesome. So when you're having those moments where you're realizing, man, I really want to, go out and, have this pizza or this or that, that's okay. That's not a problem to want those things. But setting these restrictions doesn't have to be seen as a bad thing. It can be seen as a gift you're giving yourself, because guess what? The brain loves to have structure, to have boundaries, to have instructions that when I come to this situation, this is how I handle it, because that's who I am. When people don't have boundaries or structures for themselves, and every day is sort of directionless, it's you're not progressing, you're regressing, and you're just getting further into this feeling of like, I don't feel proud of this. I'm not saying this to shame you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying this to show you that hard work makes your brain health and your physical health better. And by the way, the way that you are start interacting with people afterwards, the way you see the world, it's night and day, man. So for those who are on that verge of deciding whether you're going to continue or not, I'll say 1000%, of course, continue, but think of it strategically a bit more. Maybe the reason that you're not wanting to continue is not because you don't feel like you're not worth it, or you don't feel like, you don't want to work out or diet. Maybe you are willing to do those things, but you're just not doing it or willing to do it at the intensity level or the type of diet or structure that you're following right now. That's why it's so important to talk with folks like us, people that you trust in this industry, to be able to pivot and have a contingency plan along the way. Because guess what? You are worth it. You absolutely are. Your life can and will change if you follow through on these things, but you just have to adjust the mechanics a little bit here and integrate it into a lifestyle that is more sustainable for you, more enjoyable for you, and leads you to the promised land of the results that you want.
Yes, sir. And I like how you outlined that, where, a lot of people might hear like restriction and they might shut off their listening mode on their head. But, and there's definitely like, and I think you outlined it beautifully. We're like, hey, like not restriction in the sense where you feel guilt and shame about yourself, because, we've all been there where it's like, well, damn, I'm trying to have a better life. And then I'm trying to restrict myself, but then I feel like garbage. But the way I look at it is it's decision balances, right? And of course, there's a lot of psychology on how we make decisions and vice versa, and debate about that. But ultimately, we make decisions in our life every day that compromise positively or negatively or neutral in our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
As an example, I would say there's nothing wrong with, hey, like you're on your fitness journey, but it's your friend's birthday, or you want to go out and you want to enjoy yourself. There is absolutely nothing wrong with wanting to do that, even if it deviates for the night from your fitness goals or from your whatever. But at the same time, we do things all the time in our life that deviate maybe from what we want to do in the day or in the short term. As an example, I love my job. I love what I do. There's days where you maybe want to go be on the beach that day, but you deviate from what you want to do, or you restrict yourself from what you want to do, because at the end of the day, hey, I want to make money. I love serving people. And so I'm going to go to my job today and do the right or quote unquote responsible thing for the day. But then there's days where you take the day off, and that way you can go and enjoy yourself for that day. And so understanding that restriction is not always a bad thing as long as it's met with a healthy behavior. It is the decision balance in your life that hopefully is going to lean more in the positive for you over time.
Oh man, absolutely. Like they say kids love structure and the kids need structure. Well, we're just grown up kids, man. Like we need that as well. Like if I had no purpose, no meaning, yes, no sense of like, what am I going to do and why, for throughout the day, man, life is going to be really sad and really quite a bummer. And that's really where I found myself so many years ago, where I was just sort of living for the next dopamine hit. The routine was to go to a job I don't really like, where I'm working on projects that are constantly on hold. So it's like, okay, I can't rely on this job other than an income. Okay, great. Well, my relationship isn't going well, and I can't rely on her to like give me the fulfillment that I had before. So now I have to kind of rebuild myself and invest in other relationships and friendships. That was a restriction I had to put on myself, or a boundary I had to put on myself, instead of relying on her or that or these things or food as my, oh my God, I get to look forward to this delicious meal, and that's like my reprieve for the day. If we're relying on 1 to 2 things only throughout our day, we're not balanced enough. And by the way, fitness, dieting, that should not be your only thing. That should not be your only thing. If that is the most important thing by far, that you are also in danger of imbalance. And that's how we get body dysmorphia on both sides of the coin as well. Self-regulating yourself with restriction from too much indulgence, and self-regulating yourself with restriction from too much discipline is so important, because guess what? You will enjoy both much more when you realize they give each other meaning. Without death, life means nothing. Without restriction, enjoyment means nothing. Without enjoyment, restriction and discipline gets you nowhere. So it's everything is held in balance. And if we see life that way, as instead of having to get from A to B as fast as humanly possible, crashing and burning and feeling worthless, man, we're going to have so much a better life along the way, and results from it as well.
I think if there's an overarching message, it is balance and the way to structure your life in a way that helps you meet those goals, fulfills your life in a way that doesn't go into the extremes, which I preach 100%, sir.
Yeah, well summarized. I like it.
Excellent. Well, Teddy, this was a great conversation, man. I really appreciate the time again to know you and learning about Rebuild Fitness and what you do and kind of your origin. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Can you just let everyone know, where to find you, anything you want to plug, how to access Rebuild, anything like that?
Yeah, of course. Rebuildfitness.com is my website. You can find all of my links from there, but there's going to be articles there. There's going to be information about the Rebuild Fitness app. I call it personal training from your pocket. And there's a 7-day free trial that if you want to try that out, there's no harm, no foul, but it just gives you a little structure. But there's going to be tons of consistent information coming out free of charge, PDFs, whatever it may be. And, stick with me and Damien for all of your trusted needs, because I promise you we have your best interest at heart, and we're doing this not only to obviously pay for our bills and take care of our families and that sort of thing, but we could have chose a lot of different industries, and we do this because we want to make the world a better place. So find me there. I hope to connect with you guys on Instagram and to learn more about your stories.
Absolutely. And I'll be sure to have all those links down below. Again, y'all know where to find me on Instagram and TikTok at _shift_method. Again, YouTube, we got the podcasts that are out every other Monday, and the opposite Mondays that come out, we have YouTube videos. For the podcast, you can always listen on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms of your choosing. As well, we have merchandise. We have those custom training templates that are available through Train Heroic. So please be sure to check those out if you're trying to train on a budget. And again, if you're in the South Florida area looking for a coach for one-on-one, I have a couple spots open. Again, that's the shiftmethod.org where you can find all that information. Teddy, thank you so much, sir. Again, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll be in touch.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, man.
Later, everyone.